June, we have done no propping up.
Would you be prepared to go to an election if in the middle of a leadership race?
The NDP finally getting some candidates. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we've got multiple candidates who's been throughout the week here. They've announced themselves. There's been more important news, but the NDP getting some leadership candidates. We also have Don Davies doing a press conference, basically telling us if the NDP are going to be voting to support the Liberals or not. Are we going to be going to an election? Let's jump into this. Table salt with this one. So I showed in the previous video, Mark Carney, his major projects office. He just took over another office and employees and just stuck Don Farrell in front of it and said it's his. Well, what's really happened here is he secretly commandeered the Clean Growth Office and its staff, which was established in 2024 under Trudeau, made it his major projects office, stuck Don Farrell in there. It's just more smoke and mirrors. It's just more lazy Mark Carney. This guy couldn't be bothered to be governing the country. How many times has he gone to music festivals, concerts? He just flew over to Europe for a rugby match, met with BlackRock, the QIA, take care of business for Brookfield, head back to Canada. It's more of the same crap with this guy. Moving ahead, not a surprise, we're seeing Heather McPherson, NDP, throwing her hat in the ring for the NDP leadership race.
Well, Edmonton's only NDP member of Parliament is now running to lead the party. Heather McPherson represents Edmonton Strathcona, joining us now after making it official yesterday, this run for leadership. Let's begin with what motivated you to run?
You know, I think right now this is a really important moment for our party. You know, obviously the election in April wasn't what we'd hoped for. And so we need to find a way to build back our movement, to build back our party. I think it's important for New Democrats, but it's also so important for Canadians, for democracy in this country. And I think this moment in time, we need to open it up. We need to have more people join our party. We need to have more people see themselves within the New Democratic Party.
You talked about viability in your announcement yesterday. Yeah. 7 seats in the House of Commons right now for the NDP. What is your vision for the future?
A lot more than 7 seats, to be honest. I mean, listen, we need more New Democratic MPs. I'm really proud of what we were able to achieve in the last Parliament. We were able to get dental care. That's helped millions of Canadians. We were able to get anti-scab legislation, that framework for pharmacare.
Let's get real. You guys didn't do anything but destroy Canada. Jagmeet Singh took the knee to get his pension, and you guys all went along with this grift. And you're one of the lucky ones to retain your seat. I think she'll probably win this. Just look at their leadership rules. 50% of the signatures they gather, maximum, can be men, is ridiculous. Either way, I think she'll probably do well. She probably will end up winning this because she has a seat. Personally, I think the stuff she posts on her X account is appalling. Her outright support for other countries over our own is deplorable, but the more NDP supporters she pulls back from the Liberals, the better it is for the Conservatives.
That's what happens when more New Democrats are elected. You know, when we elect more New Democrats, we push the government, we hold them to account. You know, we are able to make the Liberal government live up to the promises they make because they're very good at it.
You can't talk about electing New Democrats. You guys just got decimated. You virtually lost almost all your seats. Another person who's thrown their hat in the ring for the NDP leadership race is this guy, Rob Ashton. We've got this post here saying this guy's immensely dangerous to the Conservatives if he wins. I don't think so. I understand why she would say that, but I don't think so.
In 1981, the CUPW went on strike for 42 days. You went on strike for 42 days because it was the right thing to do because you were fighting for maternity leave. So that proves that when the Postal Workers Union and unions across this country stand up and hit the bricks and say enough is enough to their employers, to governments that want to keep their feet on our necks and keep us down when we say enough is enough. That's when we make gains. The CUPW today, you're on strike. You're on strike, and you're on strike for good reasons, for right reasons, for a better wage so that you don't have to be worried about paying your mortgage or your rent and figuring out how to feed your families.
So this guy, he's got a lot of passion, big voice, big personality, but are the NDP going to vote for an old white guy to be their leader? Don't think so. Now, I understand this comment here. He seems like he'd be taking away a lot of the working class from Pierre Poilievre, but that's not really how the system works here. The stronger the NDP, even if it's this guy, the more he's going to pull from the Liberals than the Conservatives. And thus, that's why we saw Stephen Harper win, because there was a stronger NDP allowing the Conservatives to win. So a stronger NDP is better for the Conservatives.
This is a class war, and don't ever let anybody anybody tell you differently.
Hundreds of workers rallied on Thursday.
Employees have been picketing since Wednesday.
This guy brings a completely different vibe than all the rest. Strong, powerful, blue-collar worker, but I don't think he's going to win.
Lying. They're lying when they say you don't deserve the money that you make. You deserve every goddamn penny that you make, and we shall never apologize.
One day longer, one day stronger.
Once again, old white guy, not going to be NDP leader. He's a real milk and cookies kind of guy, not afraid to work out in the cold, squeeze through confined spaces, get chimney soot on his clothes. Loud doesn't mean dangerous. No, he doesn't look menacing. He's just a passionate guy. Very impressive. McPherson's big advantage. He already has a seat. Yeah. Next up, we got the NDP calling for an emergency debate on the Canada Post strike. Don Davies here then gets asked about whether he'd be supporting Mark Carney and the Liberals with their budget.
At a time when Canada Post and COPW are at the bargaining table, engaged in very sensitive discussions, this government makes an announcement, not through management, not delivered at the bargaining table, but done by the minister, that essentially blew up collective bargaining and led to this strike. Now, we all know that delivering the mail today in 2025 is different than it was decades ago. We know that there are economic challenges facing Canada Post. However, the question is how best to deal with them. And that's why we think an institution as vital to our country as Canada Post is. I haven't seen a more atrocious anti-worker agenda from any government since Stephen Harper, and that's saying quite a bit. You know, it's almost like the Carney government has declared war on organized labor. They've used Section 107 of the Canada Labour Code 8 times to essentially misuse it to end workers' right to take job action.
So he's not wrong there. The Liberals are abusing their power here. That's exactly what they've done with this Canada Post strike. Before they can even negotiate, they just shut it down. They put in a stop to it, and now they're saying they're not going to be delivering mail anymore. I just happened to be walking by Canada Post, and I met with some of the people out on strike and talked to them. It seems that the message out there is not really representing the actual people on the ground. And I thought I'd introduce this guy, Doug Ettinger, President and Chief Executive Officer at Canada Post. Now, who was Doug appointed by? Well, the Liberals, of course. Carla Qualtrough, Liberal. This is back in 2019, appointed him as CEO of Canada Post. And he was appointed again back in 2023 by the Liberals. Here he is. Doug Ettinger is President and CEO of Canada Post, right on their own website. But he's also on the board of Purolator. There he is. Now, immediately you'd think this is a big conflict of interest, but it turns out Canada Post owns 90% of Purolator stock. So naturally, he would sit on the board because of that stock interest. But that does pose an interesting problem here for old Doug, because this is his record here. It's awful. He got in 2019. He's worked with the company, I think, since back 2011, something like that, doing marketing, worked his way through, and then became CEO here. This is his record. And let's ignore 2020 because it was a different year, the world event. So forget about 2020, but just look at this. This is Doug's record. Now, if Mark Carney had this guy working under him in Brookfield, do you think he'd be fired? Yeah, I think so. I think he would be fired. He'd be fired anywhere if this was what he was delivering. Yet he still stays on, deficit after deficit, running Canada Post into the ground, yet he still keeps his big fat cat salary of somewhere between $506,000 to $596,000. This guy's making upwards of $600,000 a year. He's probably getting big, juicy, lucrative bonuses as well. He makes more than the Prime Minister, upwards of $200,000 a year more than the Prime Minister of Canada, with an awful record here. This guy's a financial disaster, and yet he keeps his job. Something stinks here. Something is fishy with old Doug Ettinger. Now, Liberals kicked this can down the road, Canada Post, this whole problem, because they thought the Conservatives would have to deal with it. And, well, now the Liberals are having to deal with it again. The fact they just shut this down, they're not letting the people negotiate. They're not letting the unions negotiate. And now they're cutting mail delivery to homes. You've got to wonder, since Doug sits on the board here of Purolator, now his salary is paid by Canada Post, but because Canada Post is so heavily invested in Purolator, for his bonus and his bonus structure, his salary structure, if Canada Post were to tank and do bad like it is, but Purolator was to do really well, it would still benefit him. So if he's got a structure in there where he gets a bonus based on performance, and as long as Purolator's numbers are way up, then he'd be incentivized to push Purolator over Canada Post, despite being the CEO of Canada Post. This is complete speculation. Is he tanking Canada Post or doesn't care about how well Canada Post is doing because he's getting a bigger bonus for that business being pushed over to Purolator? Something stinks over here, Doug. It's really funky. Once again, if you have a tip, go over to moosechart.com, submit a tip here. because something's going on between Doug and the Liberals and this disastrous record. This guy should have been fired years ago. And here's Don Davies when he's asked about the upcoming budget and supporting it.
May said she's meeting with the Prime Minister to discuss the budget. Do you have any meetings with the Prime Minister to discuss the budget?
I'll be meeting with the Prime Minister today, but there's been no firm agenda as to what that meeting's about yet.
What did the NDP?
Yes, he did.
Anybody didn't say what it was about?
Not in any particular detail, no.
Is it just with you or opposition leaders?
It's just with me.
Why would he want a meeting with you?
Well, you'd have to ask him that, I guess, but...
Didn't you say, what do you want to meet me about?
Well, we are in a minority parliament, and this government can't get anything passed unless it has the support of one of three parties. And I've said from the beginning, New Democrats may be reduced in number, but we still constitute a balance of power. And if this government wants to get any progressive legislation passed, at some point they're going to have to count on New Democrat votes. I also think it's just good practice in a minority parliament, frankly in a majority parliament, for leaders to talk to one another and have open lines of communication.
You must have a shopping list.
No, we don't have any shopping list. I think I've been very clear since I was appointed leader that we're here to do one thing, and that is to advocate for working people across this country and to press for policies that'll bring real relief to working families across the country. There's no secret about that.
All he has to do is basically do the exact opposite of what Jagmeet Singh would do. It's interesting, too, if you listen to the full thing, Elizabeth May also has a meeting with Mark Carney, because Mark Carney doesn't need that many votes. He needs like 3 votes extra. So if he's able to pull a couple NDP and Elizabeth May, that's all he'd need. But as this guy's saying here, support deal incoming. Is Davies going to be Jagmeet 2.0? That is the question here. Blanchette said he's not going to support. Will the NDP flip? Oh, please. He's got a set of used knee pads he wants to give him. It's obvious why bro's about to Jagmeet the NDP again. Moving ahead here, Don Davies gets asked again if he's going to support the budget. If they don't support it, we're going to be going to an election, essentially, unless the Bloc step in to support Carney's budget.
For Davies, considering a budget is not far off and you're meeting with the Prime Minister, don't you think the budget topic will come up? And I'm imagining if it does, you might have an idea what you want to see in it, because he'll need your vote.
Well, it may come up, and I expect it to. I mean, our first position, Julie, is that, we never evaluate a budget until we read it. I don't know how you can position yourselves on a document, especially one as important as this government's first budget in some very challenging economic circumstances, without reading it. So
it's funny he mentions that, because Pierre Poilievre was asked a similar question days ago, and the reporters were hounding him as if supposed to support this budget without knowing what's in it. As Don Davies just said, you need to read it first. So this is interesting, his language here. They are open to, once again, supporting the Liberals.
Our first pledge is that we will wait for the budget to come out. Second, again, we're going to have one major lens looking at this budget. Is it good for working people or not in this country? And that's going to be the focus of what we're looking for. I am concerned about framing this budget as austerity. That's not what New Democrats think should happen right now. We believe this is a time for investment in our healthcare system, investment in non-market affordable housing, and creation of jobs.
This is interesting. So Mark Carney's going to be spending a bunch of money. Is he going to be spending it in the places where the NDP can get behind it? Because otherwise we're probably going to an election. But these guys don't have a leader in place. They should have run their leadership race immediately after the election. I don't know why they didn't, but they didn't. And here they are. Once again, a weakened party that doesn't have a leader. He's an interim leader right now. He's not going to be the leader. They can't have him going to an election leading the party. So will they once again, as Jagmeet Singh did, hitch the wagon to the Liberal Party, push them through this vote, and keep this dog and pony show going? Maybe.
We're facing a significant jobs crisis in this country. We lost 100,000 jobs just in the last 2 months of summer. And, we just had bad news out of Calgary and Oshawa. We're shedding thousands of jobs. And if you're young, especially 1 out of 6 young people is out of work, that's a crisis. And it's a real loss for our economy when that kind of energy and enthusiasm and skill set is not being marshaled. So, we'll be looking for action and meaningful investment on things like that. And I'll be happy to speak to the Prime Minister about that.
It's real rich coming from the guy who, him along with all the other NDP, supported Trudeau, who are the ones who destroyed our economy. Under Carney's record here in the past 6 months, 83,000 jobs have been lost. But these guys were there supporting Jagmeet Singh, supporting Justin Trudeau the entire way.
The Bloc that says they can't they can't approve of a budget with such a high level of deficit as it's been touted by PBO, by other individuals in media. For you, the amount of the deficit is not the question you'll be looking at, or is it one of the factors that you see that could be a red line?
Well, one thing I'd say at the outset is the Bloc Québécois also said they would support this government for a year right after the election, so they seem to be changing their position on that. The deficit is always one factor in analyzing any budget. So it's an important factor, but for us, it's not the only factor, nor is it necessarily the most important factor. The deficit relevant to GDP is also an important metric, and the general economic circumstances are critically important.
It appears this confidence vote, though, hinges on the support from the NDP. So will you continue to prop up the Liberal government? We've seen you do that in the past. What would it take to continue supporting that?
I don't know what you mean by continuing to prop up the Liberal government. The only party that's propping up the government in this parliament has been the Conservatives, who have propped them up.
Real.
The NDP voted against.
Get real, dude. We all know what's going on here. You propped up the Liberals for years. The Conservatives voted with them once to get Bill C-5 through, because otherwise they would have been painted as the party that doesn't want to fix Canada. So they allowed Carney to have his bypass bill to bypass all the draconian Liberal laws that were put in place, which hasn't affected anything, really, good or bad. While meanwhile, these guys, everything they voted for has destroyed Canada. This is rich.
It's the throne speech in June. We have done no propping up.
Would you be prepared to go to an election if in the middle of a leadership race?
Well, that's really up to Mr. Carney. As the Prime Minister in a minority parliament, it's his job to construct a budget that can win and earn majority support. So that's entirely up to him. All I can tell you is we're going to be a traditional worker-based NDP opposition. We will support things we support. We'll oppose things we don't. And we will examine that budget based on whether it's good for working people or not.
Or though to go to an election?
No, I don't think Canadians want an election right now. I don't think anybody wants an election. We're certainly not looking for...
I think that's the answer right there. I think they're going to be propping up the Liberals once again. That one response basically says it. Has Carney been whispering in his ear at night? Just one more time. Just one more time.
For one, and it's not about us right now or an election. The most important issues in this country right now are the serious issues facing Canadians from coast to coast. They sent us here on April 28th, only 5 months ago, to address the serious problems facing their communities. And that's what we're going to focus on. So I'm not worried about an election right now. I'm worried about whether or not we are going to construct effective policies so that people can get affordable housing. We can create the kind of family-sustaining jobs that Canadians need. We have some action on the climate crisis. We address the affordability issue. These are the kinds of issues that Canadians, I think, want us focused on right now.
No, that's not what we want you to focus on. But I think Carney's been whispering in his ear, that gentle breeze, the waft of escargot and caviar. There's Mark Carney telling Don Davies just one more time, support the Liberals one more time. So will we go to an election? I don't think so. I think he's told us the answer here today. But will there be an election next year? Probably, because Mark Carney's got to get all his pieces in order. All of his good banker buddies trying to bring in as many as possible. He's going to be calling by-elections. But what is he going to do with Donald Trump? Not getting a deal is hurting him in the polls. There's no doubt about that.